Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is on chapter goals, and this is the first in a four-part series for our leadership teams, whether you're currently in a leadership team position or whether you are coming into a leadership team position on April 1st. These webinars are really for you. And this series starts out with how to set goals. This is especially for this next 6-month term in BNI for April through October. And what we're going to look at is really how can we set some benchmarks for the chapter that you're working with in order to grow and succeed in your chapter. Some of the other webinars that we're going to have coming up, we're going to be talking about the tools and reports on Monday's webinar at the same time, where we're going to dive deeper in the system, show you how to do some of those leadership team things that you have to do, like enter POMS reports and enter visitors and enter the speaker rotation and all of that type of thing. That's going to be coming up on Monday. And then on Tuesday, we're going to take a look at the chapter web pages and how you can edit and update your chapter web pages. And then finally, the last one in the series is going to be next Wednesday, and we're going to talk about the online renewal process for leadership teams. So today's webinar is a live webinar, so if you have any questions as we're going through the material today, please do just feel free to ask those questions. The best way to do that, you will notice that there is a question panel on the webinar software, the GoToWebinar. Just type your question in and I will see that pop up on the screen. You'll also notice that there's a handouts section, and if you'd like to, there is a handout in there called 2016 Chapter Goals. You are welcome to download that. That is an offline copy of the Chapter Goals program if you'd prefer to work on it in Excel. Have a leadership team meeting, maybe with your president, your vice president, your secretary, treasurer, anybody else, your trusted advisors, your director consultant, and you could work those goals out on paper, and then you can enter them into BNI Connect later. So that handout is for you. We're scheduled for about 30 minutes. It takes about 25 minutes or so to go through the chapter goals program. So I do like to make sure that if you have another appointment, that we get you out of here on time at the bottom of the hour. But that being said, I am happy to stay on these calls to answer any questions that you have about BNI Connect. Whether it's about the goals program, whether it's about anything in the system, you are welcome to ask any question you'd like, and I'll hang out until all of your questions are exhausted. The only silly question, by the way, is the unasked question. Finally, we are going to record this webinar. So if you need to review it afterwards, or let's say that you happen to be the president of your chapter, but your secretary treasurer and your vice president weren't able to make it today, that's okay. You can forward them the recording. You can also share those recordings with other people in your chapter. You'll be able to find those in two places. You can find them on the support site, which you can access by clicking this question mark in the upper right-hand corner, or by going to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. All right, so let's get started with today's content. Again, we're going to talk about chapter goals in the system. And one of the best things you can do when you're just starting out, especially in a leadership team position, is really figure out where you want to go as a chapter. And we can measure the progress of a chapter on a number of different levels. The great thing about BNI Connect is that you don't have to do all the calculations yourself. Once we put the goals into BNI Connect, you can always go back and review your progress throughout the course of the year. Let me show you how to do that. Now, to get to the goals program, we are going to have to go into the bowels, into the depths of BNI Connect. We're going to have to go beyond the home screen here. All of the other functions of BNI Connect, besides the slips and everything here on the front page, are accessed through these menus along the top: network, operations, reports, tools, and admin. Most of the time, the place that you're going to go to is network and operations and reports. Those are kind of the place that we live 99% of the time. Network is the social media functions of BNI Connect, the interacting with groups and with other people within BNI around the world through your connections and giving people testimonials, things like that. Operations and reports are the other two areas. Operations is really the day-to-day management of your chapter. That's where we go to do all of our data input, all of our data entry goes in through operations. Reports, on the other hand, are always read-only, so you can never enter anything into reports. If you're looking to do anything except to get statistics back out of the system, more than likely you'll find it in operations. And this one is no different. So we're going to go to the operations menu. So if we go to operations chapter, we'll see all of our things that we can do when we're managing our chapter down the left-hand side. We can work with visitors, we can work with the meeting, we can manage memberships. What we're looking to do today is we're going to manage the goals program. And there's two options here. We can enter the goals or we can view the goals. Now, as a leadership team person, you will be able to enter the goals. So, by the way, if I realize it's still only halfway through March, but if you aren't a leadership team person yet, you will get the permission to do this on April 1st. So once you're officially assigned the role of, let's say, president or vice president in your chapter, that's when you will have the ability to enter the goals. Until then, you may only see view chapter goals. Now, everybody usually in the chapter is able to see the chapter goals, whereas only the leadership team can enter them. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Enter Chapter Goals. Now, the first thing that's going to come up is a screen that just has a couple of things on it. The start month and year, the way that the goals work is it's going to allow us to input all of our goals into an online spreadsheet, essentially, that have all of the different factors that we're going to be measuring. The thing is, we can only see 6 months of it at a time just because it would be too big on the screen. So we can choose any 6-month period. By default, it's going to give us the next 6-month BNI period, which right now is April through the end of September. However, you can drop this down and change it. If you actually wanted to start inputting goals for March, you can start inputting goals for March, whatever you'd like to do. But it will only display 6 months at a time. The second thing we need to come up with is long-term vision. So the long-term vision and the mission statement, they kind of work hand in hand. The long-term vision is, where do we want to get to? If we're looking far down the road, let's say a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, where do we want to eventually get to as a chapter? So here we don't usually want to get into specifics. It's more of the final destination piece. So you can see here for that, this is the Burr chapter up in Antarctica. So it's a little test chapter that I have. Our long-term vision is to grow the chapter to be the largest chapter in the entire continent of Antarctica. In addition, we wish to be #1 in the chapter in the region in closed business and referrals within a 200-mile radius. So that's our long-term vision. That's where we want to get to. That's our definition of success. The mission statement is slightly different. That's going to be kind of like, what are the guiding factors that are going to take us there? So the first one is, where are we going to get to? And the second one is, how are we going to get there? And we're going to do this in the Burr chapter by helping members to increase their business through a structured, positive, and professional word-of-mouth program that enables them to develop long-term, meaningful relationships with quality business professionals. So again, we want to grow to be the largest chapter in the entire continent, and we're going to do that by providing our members with a structured, positive, and professional word-of-mouth program. Once you've gotten those two things settled, we're going to go ahead and click the Go button. Now this is going to generate our 6-month spreadsheet based on this start date here. And you can see when it comes out, it is very similar to an actual spreadsheet. On the right-hand side, we have a little scroll bar, and we can scroll through all of the different success drivers. That's what these are in the blue bar. Those are all of the measurements or the success drivers for our chapter. We have attendance percentage, total number of one-to-ones, CEUs, visitors, new memberships, number of members in the chapter, number of referrals, and thank you for closed business. And then under each one of these, for each month, we have an actual goal where we'll put a number in. And then we have two mechanisms. Now, mechanisms are kind of like our reminders of different things that we might be able to do in the chapter that month. One of the things about being on the leadership team is that, all of us that are in BNI, we have our own jobs. I mean, I'm a member of BNI. I've been a member of BNI since 2002. So I'm very, very quickly coming up on 14 years in BNI. And I've had my business all this time. So every time I've been on the leadership team, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to be on the leadership team. It's good work. It's rewarding. But when we leave our chapter meeting, we end up going back to our businesses, and we have phone calls to return, and we have clients that need our attention, and we have projects that we're doing. So a week tends to go by pretty quickly. And by the time our next BNI meeting comes around, we may have forgotten what we promised that we were going to do the week before. And that's what these mechanisms are here to help you with. They're here to be reminders for you on, what did you want to try to accomplish that month, or what were you going to do with your chapter in order to support the various goals? Now, before we start entering the goals in, you do have to make a decision up at the top here. It says enter goals, and it says for the whole chapter or per member. And really what this is going to do is it's going to affect how the resulting calculations are. Basically, when you're entering a goal for the whole chapter, you're putting in a big number. So when I'm talking about, how many monthly referrals do we want to have? Well, if I have, 50 members in the chapter and we're all passing a referral per week, that's going to be 200 referrals, and that would be my whole chapter goal. Now, a per member goal, on the other hand, that's going to be the much smaller number of 4. So if I wanted to pass per member goals, that would be 4, and then the system will take that and calculate it by the number of members that you expect to have in the chapter. You can use whichever one you wish. Keep in mind that it's affecting the report afterwards as opposed to what's on the screen here. So it's not going to calculate them out for you. If you can't change it either. So once you put it in, the numbers are all going to be based on that one selection. So it does have an overriding effect on the whole report. I can tell you that 90% of the people that are using this functionality are using and entering the goals as a whole chapter, and that's what I'm going to be doing today as well. Let's start looking at the goals and how do we enter the goals in, and what do they all mean? Let's take a look at the first one here, just because it's probably one of the easiest ones on the list. And what we have here is the attendance percentage. And we have our goals. Now, when I'm looking at goals, here's one little technique that I use. I always like to begin with the end in mind. So instead of going from where am I going to be next month, I'm going to look at where do I want to be at the end of 6 months. So when I leave office in September, or when we hit that 6-month benchmark in September, where do I want to be at? And this is the Burr chapter. We're up in Antarctica. It's very cold up there, so we have some attendance problems. So at the end of this 6 months, I know that I want to get to, let's say 96% attendance. And I know that right now we're hovering somewhere around an 84 to 85% attendance. So that means that I should be able to do the math and say that, if by the end of next month, let's say that we're going to be at 86% attendance, I should be able to increment it month by month to get to 96%, which should be, I believe, somewhere about 2 per month. So 88, 90, 92, 94. So this makes it easy for me to go through, beginning with the end in mind and kind of working my way backwards. Travis has a quick question. He says, once the numbers are entered, can they be changed or modified later? Yes, absolutely. You can go back and adjust your goals anytime you want to. Maybe you set your goals too high. That's fine. Go back in, correct them, make some adjustments, make them lower. Maybe you set them too low and you're knocking it out of the park. Great. Go back in and adjust them to be a little bit higher. I mean, it could also be that, you only got halfway through the goals and you need to go back and, fill it out when you have more time. That's fine too. All right, which brings me to another point. You know, we can make these goals as easy or as complicated as we want to. I'm using a very simple mathematical technique here. I'm taking the first number, I'm taking the last number, figuring out that's 10 in between, and that means that I'm going to go up by 2 each month. We could make this a lot more complicated. I mean, we know that here in Rhode Island where I live, June, July, and August, especially July and August, those are our peak summer months here. I happen to live in a tourist community, so we have a lot of people with seasonal businesses. It tends to be a tough time of year. I know that in our chapter, our attendance might actually take a little bit of a dip, so I might need to lower it. I could put all that stuff in, but quite frankly, my recommendation to you is to start out simple. Start out, get some stuff down on paper. If you'd like to go back in and analyze it on a very granular level later, then go back and do that. All right, but for now, I'm just going to go in and put, again, my more basic numbers. So let's take a look at the next part of this, and this is the mechanisms. And again, the mechanisms are different things that you can do in your chapter to support the goals that you've put in to the system. They're kind of your leadership reminders of what you want to do as almost like activities for the chapter. So for example, if I want to get started with these goals and I'm first rolling out this attendance percentage, I want to help people have better attendance in the chapter. Some things that I might do right in the beginning of my term is, I want to make sure that our vice president is sending out the control letters whenever somebody is absent. So it's something that we've really, we've been kind of lax on in the past, and something I want to concentrate on going in right away in this new term. So I can put in, here, VP control letters. And that's my reminder that in April, I'm going to be concentrating on that. Now, that's also something that in the first month of our leadership team term, there might not be as many people that have been absent 2 or 3 times in order to get those attendance letters. So that's something I may need to concentrate on for a couple of months. So I can just take this and put it in for a couple of months there. Another mechanism that we might be able to do is to make sure that if somebody misses a meeting, let's say, we call them and we just say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry you didn't make it today. Is everything okay? Really following up with people that are absent to let them know that they were missed at the meeting. So we could do follow-up calls. And we want to make sure we get those started in that first month, and hopefully that's a trend that will continue through the rest of that particular session. So if you're not sure of things, again, work with your director consultant. That is what your director consultant is there for, to sit down, to talk with them, find out more about how you can work some of these things into your chapter. If you're just looking for some ideas about it, up here in the upper right-hand corner, it says Chapter Goal Guide. And what this is a little help document that has some possible mechanisms. So these are, again, this is not the end all be all of everything you could possibly do. These are just a couple of things to get your mind working around it. So for example, attendance. You can do the follow-up phone calls. That's what I had just put in there. Another thing, you can implement the mentoring program. You find somebody's absent a lot, make them a mentor or have them mentor with somebody as well. Bring your sub day or hand out the VP reports. All of these things can help to improve attendance. And ideally, you want to fill out all of the boxes here so that you bring your way through the year. All right, so that's the attendance. Let's take a look at some of these other ones. Now, one thing that I say, you don't have to do these in order, by the way. These are in somewhat of a random order just throughout the form. I actually recommend skipping down pretty much to the bottom here. And one of the most important goals we need to determine that's actually going to flow into all of the rest of these goals is the number of members in the chapter. So basically, how big do you want your chapter to get? Once again, I like to start with the end in mind. So I know that I want to get to about 40 members That's about how big we want to get our chapter. I also know that we're about 30 members now. So I know, again, where we're starting and where we're finishing. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 30 members by the end of April. And now I know that I need to grow by about 2 members per month in order to hit my goal of 40. Right? Maybe your goal is a little bit bigger than that. Maybe it's a little smaller than that. But we know how much we have to grow. And again, we need to fill out some mechanisms. How are we going to support that particular goal of growth? And one thing I know is we're going to do a Visitors Day. Now, we know extravaganza is going to be in place until the end of May. So we can make sure that we're having a Visitors Day probably sometime in April or May to make sure that we're participating and we qualify for the membership extravaganza. So I'm going to put in April that we are going to conduct a Visitor Day. And then throughout the year, maybe towards the end of this 6-month term, maybe we want to do another Visitor Day. Maybe we just want to do a stack day, where we're inviting just a couple of professions and we're overloading it with, multiple people from that profession. So we have a higher chance of somebody, joining the chapter on that day. So maybe we're going to do a stack day. Maybe during these summer months when, we're starting to have a little bit of attendance problems, or maybe people aren't paying attention as much, maybe we want to do a BNI game. That's always a really fun thing to do with the chapter. For anybody that doesn't know what the BNI game is, that's where you break the chapter into a couple of different teams, usually 2, 3, or 4 teams. No more than maybe 4 or 5 members per team. And you compete against each other, and you get points by doing good things in the chapter. For example, if you show up on time, maybe you get 1 point. Let's say that you have a referral that week. Maybe you get 3 points for that. If you bring a visitor that week, you get like 5 points, and maybe that visitor turns into a member. You get 10 points for that. You can come up with your own point system, and your region has examples of how to run this game as well. But that's another thing that you can do to really spark up some interest. And again, because bringing in new members is part of the points, then that can help support this goal. All right, and again, you do want to go through and try to find more activities that will support that throughout the year. All right, now that we have the number of members in the chapter, we want to know how big our chapter is going to be. Now we know that we have to bring in so many new members in order to grow. So if we're growing by 2 members per month, then we need to bring in 2 more members, right? Well, sort of. One of the things about BNI is that we do have a general attrition rate. I mean, people do leave BNI. As much as we wish every member that joined was a lifetime member forever and ever, people do leave the chapter. And sometimes it's for good reasons. Sometimes because their business has grown so much that they need to take some time off, or maybe they're moving, or maybe they, there's an addition to the family coming on, or any of a number of those good reasons. On average, a chapter will lose 12 members per year. So an average chapter will lose approximately 1 member per month. So we do need to factor that in to the number of new members we need to take on. So in order to just stay on track, we really need to bring in 1 new member per month just to stay even. So in order to grow, that means that we really need 3 new members per month. So I can put this across the board as 3 new members per month. Now again, going back to this, if you want to take this to the next level, I mean, you really can look at it and say, well, we're doing a Visitors Day. We're going to be doing a Visitors Day and a BNI game around here. So maybe with the Visitors Day, we're going to end up with 5 new members in this month. And, you can really get a lot more complicated with this. But again, let's get the basics in first. All right, so with new memberships, we can fill out our activities. Now, what are things that are going to support new memberships? Well, a lot of times, a lot of the things down here are going to support that. For example, the BNI game and the stack day. Those are all things that can help to support new memberships. Maybe one thing you want to concentrate on is doing the visitor orientation program. That's when at the end of the meeting, you bring the visitors out into the hallway or out into the other section of the room where you can answer any questions that they had about the meeting, or possibly give them an application and help them to fill it out. So maybe you want to do the visitor orientation and make sure that they're doing that part of the process as part of what you're doing in April. All right, and again, if you're looking for other ideas, please remember the chapter goal guide up in the upper right-hand corner. That will give you some ideas for this as well. So we can, visitor host calls guests and run a proper visitor orientation and assure that the membership committee is interviewing using the interview process. All right, so now that we know how many number of new memberships we need, now we know how many visitors we have to bring in. So at the very least, we're going to need 3 visitors a month in order to achieve our goal of 3 new members. However, we know that not every visitor that comes to your chapter will join the chapter. So one thing that you have to keep in mind here is whatever your conversion rate is. Now you can find your conversion rate or what your average conversion rate is by looking at the traffic lights report. That will have your conversion rate. You can also just do this, kind of based on how you feel your chapter is doing. If you think about how many visitors you've had over the past, let's say, month or 6 months and how many new members you've had, you can kind of figure out how many visitors it takes per new member. Now, on average, it's going to be 1 in every 4 to 1 in every 6 visitors that come to the meeting end up joining. So I'm going to go on the conservative side here and say that, we have a 25% conversion ratio. So 1 in every 4 visitors ends up joining. So for that, I'm going to need to say that we're going to need 12 visitors per month in order to achieve our goal. Once again, I can put some mechanisms in that help to support that goal, the visitors day, the stack days, the visitor orientation, all of those things. And again, look at the chapter goal guide for more ideas about that. All right, so that's the hard part of it. Now, we have a couple of other numbers we can fill out that have to do really with the member statistics. So how are members doing when they're performing in the chapter? That's going to be the referrals, the CEUs, and the one-to-ones. Now, one thing that I like to do with this is we prescribe in our region, and a lot of regions do, to what we call the power of 1, which means that our goal as a personal member is to shoot for 1 of everything. So we're really looking to get 1 referral per week, have at least 1 one-to-one per week, and have at least 1 CEU per week. We're also looking to get no more than 1 absence every 6 months and bring in 1 visitor per month. But when it comes to the other ones, 1 one-to-one per week, 1 CEU per week, and 1, what did I miss? 1 one-to-one CEU, 1 referral per week. So that actually makes the rest of this pretty easy. So we can just really take the number of the members in chapter and multiply that by 4 and have an approximate number for the month. So here we're going to have 120. And we're going to have, 128, 136, and so on and so forth. So as we're growing, we have those. And of course, these are going to be the same numbers that we're going to have for CEUs as well as for one-to-ones. And we can put those in across the board and, again, take some time to put in some mechanisms. And then the final number is going to be the thank you for closed business. For this one, I recommend that you come up with, how much money you want to pass in a year and divide that one by 12. So I know that we want to be a $1 million chapter, and to be a $1 million chapter, I'd say it would be fair that we need to pass about $100,000 worth of business every month. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in for a goal here. So 100,000. I'm going to grab this number and I'm going to copy it across. Now, when you're all set, or even as you're going along, what you want to do is make sure you click the Save button in order to get your goals saved in the system. It will keep you on this page. So as you're going through, it's a good idea, just like you would if you were working on a Word document or an Excel file, make sure you hit that Save once in a while. Now, after your goals have been entered, here's the great part of it, is that you'll be able to follow along throughout the year. So to follow along, we're going to go back to that operations menu. We're going to go back to the manage goals function. And instead of entering the goals, we're going to do view chapter goals. It's going to ask us what period we want to look at. It's going to give you the current period, current 6-month period. And what it'll do is it will start to fill out the actual results based on the PALMS report. So as you're entering PALMS report throughout the year, it will insert those numbers into the goals and you can follow along with how you're doing. You can also use this as kind of a calendar for the different activities that you wanted to do throughout the year. Now, this is just my test chapter up in Antarctica, so the results are a bit skewed. Let's take a look at a couple of real chapters. Now, there's there's a couple of regions in the United States here that are using this program religiously. We have one particular region managed by Tom Fleming, if you've ever heard of him. He is the Tampa Bay area of Florida, Tampa Bay and Central West. Now, I love this region because I know that at any time I can just go and choose any random chapter I want to. I can go in and choose view chapter goals, and I know there'll be some results in here because every single chapter enters their goals every single period. So this is the deal makers chapter in Tampa. And their long-term vision, the deal makers' mission, is to foster prosperous professional relationships for all members through the structured philosophy of givers gain. Through targeted education, networking, and a collective teamwork, we will grow each business segment represented in the chapter to its fullest potential. We pledge to pass only the highest quality referrals, and in turn, those referred will hold their work performed to the highest standard. Excellent long-term vision, and their mission statement is that members meeting make more millions, the M5 by 10-5. All right, so let's see how did they do? How have they been doing for these past 6 months? So we can see they have a 100% goal pretty much across the board for attendance. And they're almost hitting that, 95 and 96 and 99%. And what are some of the things that they did over the past 6 months? They make sure they acknowledge members for perfect attendance. So that's even better. Sending the control letters is great, but acknowledge the positive things that people are doing. That's an awesome idea. Open networking exercises, educational moments on attendance impacts to one-to-ones. All of these are great things. So let's take a look at some of the other stuff. Their total number of one-to-ones. Looks like they were a little bit below their goal most of the year there. We have the CEUs, their visitors, new members, and number of members in the chapter. And here we can actually see that it looks like they were exceeding their goals towards the end here. They have an actual of 48 members where they had a goal of 45. All right, and that, my friends, is the goal program in BNI Connect, and we are at the bottom of the hour. So what I'd like to do is to open this up to any questions. If anybody has any questions whatsoever, I would love to answer those questions now. While you're thinking and typing in your questions, just a reminder, this is being recorded. I will make this available usually within about 48 hours up on the support site as well as on our YouTube channel. Let me show you where you can find that information real quick. Is if you go into BNI Connect and in the upper right-hand corner, you will see this question mark. This question mark will take you to the support site. And on the support site, one of the very first things you'll see listed here is all of the upcoming webinars. A good referral for me is to please invite other chapter members and other leadership team members to these webinars. Our very next webinar is going to be on Monday. So no webinars tomorrow or Friday. We have a webinar on Monday, the 21st of March. We're going to take a deep dive into BNI Connect. It's one of our very few 1-hour webinars because it does take that long to go through all of the different processes here in BNI Connect. We'll follow that up Tuesday with chapter web pages and again with the leadership teams online renewal process. And we'll do the whole series again in April. So stay tuned for that schedule. You can also see that there's a link here. These webinars were recorded, so you'll be able to follow along with any of those. If you'd like to share any of the webinars that we've done, please feel free to share these with your other chapter members. And these ones for today's session will be up there shortly as well. You can also check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. We have our entire webinar archive up here, as well as things like short educational moments. They're little 3 to 5 minute videos that you can take back to your chapter to just show them one specific function in BNI Connect. All right, one final thing is I would love it if you gave us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. We do tons of stuff up here. Really, it's announcements, and we have, for example, our announcement for today's webinar. We have recordings, we have tips and tricks, and have you checked out this report and things like that. So please do check out our Facebook channel as well. Carol has a question. Do we get education credits for this webinar? Yes, absolutely, Carol. Thank you for reminding me. Please make sure, go to the home page, go back and click this home button, and the fourth link down, you will see Submit CEU Slips. Make sure you give yourself 1 credit for today's webinar. Oops, not 14. Give yourself 1 credit for today's webinar. Excellent. Thank you so much for the reminder, Carol. All right, and Jack says, did you say before that the goals can be changed? Yes, Jack, you can go back in. All you need to do is go back to that enter goals and just choose that same time frame again, and you can go back in and change any of the goals that you need to. So again, my recommendation is get some goals in there, and you can always go back and revisit them later. All right, does that help? Excellent, thank you. All right, so if there's no additional questions, what I'm going to do is let you guys go. Say thank you guys so much for being here today and for putting the time and the effort in to learn more about the goals in BNI Connect. If you're incoming leadership team, I wish you the best of luck in April for the next 6 months, and I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Happy connecting, everyone.